let's get started.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our annual Youth Summit. The agenda for today, we're first starting with a presentation on the importance of advocacy by Adam and Tati, and then Manav and I will present on YPAR. We'll have a 5-minute break and then come back for Josue's presentation on Mexican American Studies, Kennedy and Manav's presentation on classroom censorship, and then we'll close out with some resources and a call to action. And then introductions, if all of our board members want to introduce ourselves. I'm Shreya, my names are she, her.
Hi guys, my name is Kennedy Moore. I go by she, her, and I'm currently located in Frisco, Texas.
Hi, I'm Manav, she, her in Austin, Texas.
Hi, I'm Josue. I go by he, him, and I'm from San Antonio, Texas.
I'm Adam. I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth area in Texas. I use he, him pronouns.
And Tati, just to let you know, do you mind repeating yourself? We aren't able to hear you if you would. You may have to rejoin the Zoom because I think we still had a little trouble with audio. But once you come back, we'll be able to continue this.
So this is exciting because it is our first annual Youth Summit, and it's also IDRA's 50th year of working for excellence in education for all children. So back in 1973, a small group of concerned citizens set out to change the world, pledging to defend all students and their right to an excellent and equitable education. Since then, IDRA has helped get new and better laws, guided school leaders and teachers, conducted research, and created powerful student and parent leadership programs. IDRA listens first to students, families, and others, and we tell the truth even when the truth hurts, because every student of color, gender, or identity, immigrants, family income, and language, every student should have a safe, welcoming public school that prepares them for college and life. And IDRA won't stop until we get there. Those of us presenting today are members of the IDRA Youth Advisory Board, which is an initiative that allows youth to talk about problems that they face in the public education system in Texas.
Okay, we're gonna do an icebreaker, but real quick, Tati just joined. So would you like to introduce yourself?
Is it okay? It's working now. Sorry. Is it?
Yes,
Yeah.
we're able to hear.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, all good.
Okay, thank you. You cannot.
All right, so we're gonna start with the geographic icebreaker. We're gonna start this little poll, and you're gonna put a little marker where you're from. So I'm gonna put a link in the chat. Just all right here. Oh, is my screen not available? You can't see it?
We can see the window where it says poll everywhere, and it looks like you did activate it, but we're still seeing the activities dashboard.
Oh, okay. I'll try reloading. But yeah, in the meantime, check out that link. Oh, yeah, this one. All right, can you guys see it now?
Yes.
Yay. Okay, so we have a few responses. Texas, we have somebody. Ooh, is that Baltimore? Yay. Atlanta. Yay. Wow. Okay. Oh, south of Texas. Great, great. Did everyone get a chance? A little bit more. Oh, okay, this is good because now everyone who's in the meeting kind of has an idea of the reach we have. It's not just Texas, it's people all over. And we kind of get a context for the broader presentation. So this is really great. Now we're going to do a second icebreaker. Let me know if this works, guys. We're gonna do a word cloud. If you guys don't know what a word cloud is, it's kind of just like a cool configuration of different words. I can't describe it. You'll see it. So yeah, I'll put this link in the chat. And all the directions. Oh, here you guys go. Wow. Voter empowerment. Wow, that's a new word. Great. Connection. I didn't know you could put oh, it's just a nice smiley face. I didn't know you guys could use cursive. That's cool. Okay, guys. I like how many connections and communities we have. That's really great. All right, let's get started with our presentation. And we're going to start out with Tati and Adam talking about the importance of advocacy.
Hello, my name is Tati Martinez, and Adam is going. I'm going to do the next. So Adam.
All right, so we have a little activity as well. Let me put it in the chat real quick. If I can get it going. There we go. It's just a little Jamboard activity that you can type in whatever your own definition of advocacy is. All right, so the actual definition of advocacy, according to Google, it's an activity by an individual or group that aims to influence decisions within political, economic, and social institutions. So what can advocacy help with?
So all of you guys were really correct. Of definition, but there's actually a lot of things that that advocacy can help with, and one of the main focus of this presentation is talking about education policy in the Rio Grande Valley and some of the issues. And next slide, please. So before we get into the issues, I wanted to do a little bit of background on what actually is the RGV, as some people are not familiar with it. So the Rio Grande Valley is located at the southernmost point of Texas. It's about 10 minutes away from the border of Mexico. And it's rich in culture, history, talent, a bunch of different things. Even though a lot of people don't know about it, the people are some of the nicest people that I've ever met. The public education is good, and it's just a very nice town that has a lot of really things that are important to me, but there is some issues surrounding it. Next slide, please. Yes, so there is currently a huge housing and poverty crisis in the RGV right now. And there is something called colonias. So colonias basically appear when a landowner sells land divided by lots. Most of the time, there is no resident infrastructure, running water, drainage, or indoor plumbing. Some of these even have no roof or a floor. Some people have dirt instead of roofs because roofing and floors are expensive, and it is even though it's rich in culture and history, the Rio Grande Valley is one of the most poorest regions, not only in Texas but in the entire United States. My school personally is ranked below the average, below the poverty line, and we have very few funding for sports and things, and over half the kids in my district did not have any access to internet during the 2020 pandemic. So important info about these colonias is 96% of residents of the colonias are Hispanic or Latino, with 40% living below the poverty line. Most colonias are located in food deserts. If you're not familiar with that term, it's basically as a low income area, which is and more than 1 mile from a supermarket or more than 10 miles from a supermarket. And most of these food deserts do happen to be in rural areas, but they do happen to be in suburban areas and in the cities as well. Next slide, please. Now, these images are a little, not disturbing, but not very easy to see. But this is very real. I actually have a colonia that is right next to my house in the neighborhood, and they do look like this. The images on the right are with flooding. Even in my neighborhood does send a flood. And what happens is the government does not give a lot of funding or access to proper drainage, unlike big cities like Miami or Houston or Austin, which is why you don't really see this happen. Which is why you don't really see this happening in the big cities. But that's basically what happens in the colonias. And then there's another issue. Next slide, please. And there's also another issue, which is internet accessibility. So here we have a graph that was in 2020 at the height of the pandemic, during where technology was needed the most, and it actually says that these people had no internet access and no computer access. So a lot of people did not have a lot of computer access in the valley during this time. And my school actually had to give out computers because a lot of the students could not join the online classes because they had no laptops. They didn't have anything other than a phone. So a survey by Rio Grande Valley Guardian showed that half of the students in the local valley universities needed access to high-speed Wi-Fi. In contrast, government maps showed the valley has 100% internet range with executives like Manuel Manny Cruz, executive director of LRGBTC, these images like this are not accurate. This is still a big problem today, as my mom is actually a professor at the local university in the school, and she still has students telling her, Miss, I can't get this homework done because I have no internet access in my house because I live in this rural area or I live in a colonia that has no internet access. Keep in mind, if the colonia did not start with a proper infrastructure in the first place, the last thing that it's going to start with is internet accessibility. And a lot of people in the colonias don't know Spanish, don't know Spanish, or they don't know how to ask for these things. So what can we do to help? Go ahead. What solutions do you guys think that we can do? What solutions do you think can happen to fix this issue? It's in the link in the chat. You can put anything and everything you think that we can do to fix it. Okay. Someone said get a better governor. But yeah, that's a good one. Anyone? I know a lot of people are on it right now. People are trying to get their responses on there, but that's a good idea. If you agree with that, if you don't, that's okay too.
And if anyone wants to come off mute as well and give their idea, if that's too much to type out, feel free.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and move on to the next slide. So actually all of these are correct because us, the youth, are the voice of this generation. Your solutions will deserve and need to be heard by us and adults in legislation, adults in these organizations, such as the coalitions that are in here today, so more people can see a world built for us. Yeah, next slide. So solutions, so all of those issues like the colonias, the internet accessibility, and others that are going to be talked about today have lots of solutions. One of which is donating to education policy nonprofits, voting for people for policies and people that support the RGB and allow more people to become aware of these issues, finding and joining local coalitions or organizations. Donating to nonprofits. By donating to nonprofits that align with your beliefs surrounding education advocacy, you can help expand and stabilize organizations while allowing them to grow and find solutions to these issues. Adam can take it from here.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm still on mute. So we have a list of different coalitions in like the main areas of Texas that you can like go to and donate or like help support them in any way. We have a Google Doc that has all of these links on it that I can put in the chat so that anyone can access them afterwards. There we go. Copy link. All right, there we go. So that has all the links on it that we've used in this presentation so that they're easily accessed. Next slide. One of the big things that we can all do to help is vote and register to vote. So voting for different like laws and legislators helps get the message across. Even if like the law you vote for doesn't win, it gives it more people see it just by people voting for it. So next slide. So a quote that I really like by Eva Marie Lewis, who's a activist. To be an activist is to speak, to be an advocate is to listen. Society can't move forward without both. And sources.
Thank you guys so much for listening to our presentation, and we hope that you take a look at those organizations. I'm going to put a link towards the end of the presentation to Lupe, for those people that are tuning in from the Valley. It's a migrant farmer association, but they also help with things like internet accessibility and poverty and donating. But yes, we really appreciate all you being here, and we hope that you do research more on the Valley, research more on these bills that are trying to stop these things from happening. And we just thank you all for your time. Thank you so much.
Great, that was really great, y'all. Thank you so much. Now Shreya and I are going to do a snapshot of our youth participatory action research project that we're doing as part of the Youth Advisory Board. It involves me, Shreya, as well as Kennedy and Josue. And it is this long title, The Intersections of Culturally Responsive Education in the School to Prison Pipeline, a Mixed Method Study.
So what is YPAR? YPAR is Youth Participatory Action Research, and it's a form of participatory action research that centers youth. So youth are the ones actually carrying out the research, and it defines them as assets and autonomous agents in the research project, in the research process. This allows student researchers to resolve social problems that directly impact their communities, because as youth, we do have the unique perspective of knowing how our communities are impacted, especially when it comes to education issues. And YPAR allows us to identify and conduct research in issues that impact our communities and prioritize those most impacted, enabling us to critique, redefine, and overcome inequities experienced in our communities and schools.
So the question that we chose to investigate in our YPAR is, what role do culturally responsive pedagogy and curriculum play in reducing punitive discipline practices at the school campus level? So let's break this down a little bit. So pedagogy is basically just education, it's curriculum. And what culturally responsive means is responding to the differences in culture and the necessity of cultural knowledge and a historical knowledge based on cultural groups. So to kind of give some specific concrete examples, here's some quotes from our survey that we used. One is topics from a lens of multiple cultural perspectives, including but not limited to race, culture, immigrant status, and country of origin. We also kind of specified into the types of the avenues of education that would constitute this. So like history lessons or literature, books, short stories, poetry, addressing topics pertaining to social justice, civil rights, or discrimination on the basis of race, culture, immigrant status, or
So the methods and modes of inquiry we used, we utilized a survey-based approach in data collection. So we initially sent out surveys to our peers in our areas. We're located in 3 geographic areas. We analyzed these survey responses, and then we will choose, and we're still in the middle of this project, so we will choose 5 respondents to participate in a 60-minute focus group. And then during this focus group, we will conduct 3 focus groups for each area, and then that will help inform our research and what issues most directly impact youth. As you can see in the picture on the right here, this is a screenshot of our survey. So we had different factors impacting school curriculum and asked students how strongly they agreed and disagreed with how represented they felt in their education. The survey allowed us to kind of collect quantitative data, and then the focus groups allow us to really hear from youth voices and see what they feel really impacts their education.
Yeah, so as Shreya said, we are doing this project in 3 main locations: Frisco, Austin, and San Antonio. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but if you go to school in any of these regions and you're interested in helping us out and participating, please contact us. So just to kind of zone in on the survey, basically the survey is the quantitative part of our mixed methods study. So the first section will ask the respondents the breadth of their experiences with culturally responsive education and how they perceived its effects or lack of on their learning environment as a whole. So as Shreya said, it's all 1 to 5, strongly disagree to strongly agree. And the second section concerns their experiences with curriculums that are discriminatory, one-sided, or lack historical cultural accuracy. They are discriminatory in school discipline practices, or overall discriminatory or hostile academic environments. So, and it's much more complicated than this, but to put it broadly, we have our independent variable, culturally responsive pedagogy, and then we have our dependent variable, what we're investigating that effect of on discriminatory discipline practices and discriminatory academic environments, and particularly the role of reducing those aspects through culturally responsive education. We're also having focus groups yet secure. We don't know the dates yet. We know we're going to hold 3 of them. They're going to be an hour long, 1 for each of our 3 locations. So we're going to have about half of it will be a structured format. We'll have a set of questions discussing these attitudes in a more in-depth way than the survey could encapsulate. And then we're going to kind of turn it to you guys to have more of a loose conversation about these topics, kind of facilitate something that's unique and meaningful. So if you're interested, if this sounds interesting to you at all, please reach out to us. Depending on which of these areas you are, please maybe take a picture of these emails, or we'll probably send it out to you tomorrow to contact us if you'd like to participate. Thank you. So now we're going to have a 5-ish minute break. So thank you for bearing with us so far. All right. Now we're gonna get started with Josue's presentation.
Hello, everyone. I'm Josue Peralta de Jesus, and I'm going to present some stuff to you guys about ethnic studies with, a higher focus and concentration on Mexican American studies. Next slide, please. So firstly, what is Mexican American studies, which I'm going to refer to, and is often referred to as MAS. MAS is an ethnic studies course that originally was taught at the collegiate level, the post-secondary level, but now has expanded much more to the high school level and even the middle school level and elementary school level. MAS courses usually cover the politics of Mexican Americans, such as the Chicano movement, the customs of Mexican Americans, which I think is like a beautiful blend that it's really worth learning about. Yeah, I forgot to turn my camera on. Let's see. The history of Mexican Americans, their stories, how they fought for better conditions. And, I really am fascinated by the subject because it's, my grandparents' history, since they spent a lot of time in Texas, I would say. And the entire point of the course, at least like according to the Texas Education Agency, is to learn about the history and cultural contributions of Mexican Americans. I say there and Mexican Americans, but in reality, I mean our history. That's how I feel about this sort of course. And this course sounds pretty great, pretty awesome, and like a pretty representative. I would say, growing up, I wouldn't really hear a lot about what my grandparents or those kinds of groups are doing in the United States at that time. I always hear a lot about just the Boston Tea Party, that sort of thing. So I would like to ask the folks in the chat, from what I've discussed a little bit about MAS, can you guys give me a brief reason why you think these sorts of courses and ethnic studies courses may face censorship from legislative bodies, particularly those that are conservative in nature? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'll give y'all a couple of seconds for that, So, The largest, previous slide, please. The largest reasons are firstly that sometimes there's no agreed upon curriculum. There isn't or sometimes there's not enough desire or activism to raise awareness for ethnic studies. And so often classes like this aren't held to high importance like they should. In Texas, for example, there was a large controversy when the designated textbook for MAS was created by authors with no knowledge or expertise in the field in the first place. And so they got into a really big controversy with that. Yes, and secondly, and this is the reason that many people are much more familiar with, there are many people and politicians that claim that ethnic studies as a whole, which often encompass history of like the harsh oppression that certain groups of people have faced throughout history, that these courses promote resentment towards a certain race or class of people. Like, in other words, some people believe that ethnic studies promote a sense of hatred towards white people. And I mean, I'm not going to dive too much into white supremacy, but it's undeniable that it played a large role. It played a large role in the upbringing of several ethnic groups in the United States, like the fight for more equal rights. So that is something that we have to keep in mind for our history. Like, that's not something that should be censored. That's something that we have to learn about. And if I'm also not going to talk too much about why I believe ethnic studies and MAS is important, because the point of my presentation is to show you guys that advocacy is possible, like at any level, especially, you know, at the student level. So if you are interested, I provided a QR code, which it might not be working right now. I don't know why. But these can be found at IDRA's website as well. Mine is specifically about Mexican American studies and how I believe it should be more integrated into our regular US history curriculum. But it's not only just my segment too. There's actually IDRA released a newsletter for September 2022 where all of the articles were written by students from the Youth Advisory Board. So this is just one of them. So I invite you guys to be sure to check them out. So actually the title there, if you look that up, I think it should pop up with IDRA. So next slide, please. So everything about this, everything about MAS, all the issues we faced, I had no idea at all about anything of it. I'm gonna be honest, like I didn't know anything about that. I still thought a lot about MAS though, you know, the course itself, because it was offered at my school. I couldn't take it. We only had it for 1 year. I thought a lot about how I barely heard anything about, like, you know, my grandparents and beyond, you know, what they were doing, if they were just chilling in San Antonio over a while. And so, yeah, but the way I actually got introduced to this entire subject, this entire community, was when I volunteered to help for an event called Cafecito y Más, which is hosted by IDRA and UTSA. When I was there, I was mind blown. Like, there were teachers there from all over the city. There were students from like UTSA. I didn't even know that MAS, Mexican American Studies, was like a whole major. And there they were, like, studying that. And there was even students from like elementary school and middle school. And yeah, I was mind blown. From there, I became like more aware. I met so many people who shared the same beliefs as me, who shared the same drive as me. And I made a lot of connections. I was enriched, and I connected with a lot of people. I connected with a lot of teachers, and I connected with Aurelio Montemayor, who is IDRA's Family Engagement Coordinator, and Liliana Saldaña, who is the head of the MAS department at UTSA. Aurelio alone helped me, introduce me to like a huge network of people. I learned about MAS summits and teacher academies and people who live in RGB, and I just became more aware of how big this community was. And I even won, this is kind of random, but I even won like some books about Mexican American Studies and Chicanos. And eventually I got to be the MC of Cafecito y Más. And when I say that, I kind of can't believe it, because I always see people doing this sort of stuff that I used to call when I was younger, like extra. And well, like, oh my God, like, you know, I get to actually do this sort of thing. And so the reason I tell you this isn't to brag or anything, but it's to show you that advocacy begins with you. Like, no matter the age or where you come from or anything like that, like, it's entirely possible to make change happen if you're motivated. This is something that made me realize, like, you know, test scores, GPA, that has nothing to do with a student's value. Like, I learned that students, especially whenever I saw like everyone there, like, student value comes from their drive to put themselves out there. You know, I also say this because like these sorts of groups and these communities and these opportunities, like they're everywhere. And like sometimes we have to ourselves, we have to like kind of put in that work to look for these sorts of things. So because I didn't know at all that this would have existed. If I didn't join the youth advisory board, I probably would have never knew like about this huge community. So you have to make connections, which I'm here to help with too. I'm providing my contact information at the end too, again. And so next slide, please. And the reason I speak about this as well is because I would like to introduce with you guys the community of practice. All this is just a group of like-minded individuals who share the same passions as you, people who share the same passions. And for example, Cafecito y Más, for example, is a community of practice. Next slide. And so I was able to form my own group too at my school with the help of some peers and Aurelio, of course. We managed to use our knowledge to make a petition and get over 100 signatures from my school, which is crazy because you go to like a way smaller school. So it's probably like an entire grade. And it was successful enough to add it back to course selection. And from what I heard, there's a lot of people who signed up. So it's very likely that we're going to have 1 or 2 sections. And so the reason that I say this is, again, advocacy. We keep emphasizing this, but because it's so true, it begins with you and your desire to put yourself out there. So this is like some of the flyers that I made to put around the school to tell people to sign up. And yeah, next slide, please. And that was what recently happened. But I would like to share with you all what's going to happen in the near future. So if you live in San Antonio and are interested in advocacy and expansion of Mexican American Studies, I encourage you to sign up for our upcoming Cafecito y Más. The information is here on the flyer, but of course I can tell you more about it and what it's like. It's a beautiful, I would say, mini conference, but again, it's a community. And I would also invite you to consider joining Masistas. It is a group co-founded by me, another peer, and Aurelio, where we meet at IDRA's office every 2 weeks on a Saturday. And actually, this upcoming Saturday is our next meeting, and we're planning stuff for the Cesar Chavez March in San Antonio. And below this is my contact information if you would be interested in reaching out to me for more resources. And next slide, please. For those of you outside of Texas, especially those of you who are younger and in high school, these QR codes, which again, I don't think work right now, but that's why I provided my contact information so I can share my materials with you guys. These QR codes, what they were supposed to be were guides on how to successfully form an advocacy group, a teenage advocacy group. And well, basically what that is a community of practice. And if you want to contact me, like about anything, especially if it's Mas, I will help you out. No problem. And thank you guys for being here and for listening.
All right. And now we're gonna Kennedy and I are gonna present the importance of objective education in the classroom.
Okay, so in the classroom, we are taught a selective education. This includes avoidance of controversial taboo topics, disregard due to lack of time to cover these topics, and fear of pushback from parents, or overall just a lack of representation in the curriculum. That's it. We can circumvent this problem, but as we all know, we've seen a rise of classroom censorship bills being passed in the last couple of years. This can be seen in one of the most major ones that the state of Texas has seen so far, which is Senate Bill 3. This became law on September 1st, 2021, and effectively removes topics about diverse communities out of the Texas TEKS. This is basically a combination of a list of historical BIPOC figures as well as events that are not going to be talked about because they're not deemed worthy enough to be talked about. This ultimately stops the conversation on racism, its role in our country, and how it led us to the place we are now. This is not only a disservice to not only the students, but the entire nation, because this is raising a generation of young people that don't know the truth. And my humble opinion, I like to say growing in blissful ignorance. This stunts the opportunity for students to go deeper and develop their contextual skills to analyze and use higher level ways of thinking instead of relying on regurgitating facts and observing them. We know that minorities have not been represented in the curriculum for years now, and they learn the majority of their history at home or in their communities. But imagine the effects that it would have on all of us if we learned that a genocide occurred, but not the results of it happening.
So just kind of a visual, like a graphic. The TEKS, if you don't know, are like the Texas state requirements for public school students to learn. And as you can see, a lot of these topics, like the American labor movement, the KKK, the eugenics movement, Brown v. Board, MLK's Birmingham jail letter, are not required by the TEKS. They exist, but the vast majority are not in these guidelines that are so widespread and so universal in developing curriculums.
Okay, now how do we fix this? We must change the narrative. So with this rise of classroom censorship, we need to combat this. And most of the times we hear the argument that it's indoctrination. Well, I like to say to this, let's start leading with objective education, simply from the fact because it's objective. There's no agenda being pushed, and it only provides the facts, and it puts the responsibility on the student to come up with their own opinion. I also say that we must embrace narratives. Multi-perspective teaching allows students to see information from all different point of views and paradigms and expands their perspective on events and or people. It ultimately sets them up for a global position in their school, communities, and careers.
So one way we can kind of implement these ideas is through an idea called textured learning, which link to there's an IDRA article, wonderful, we'll provide it with you guys later. It's a framework that goes beyond the standard teaching methods of today by prioritizing culture, community, knowledge, and truth first. So it humanizes the student's experience and their educational experience and opens up education to what it was always meant to be: exploration, trial and error, and the development of critical thinking skills. So, and I know we discuss a lot about, social justice and civil rights. Of course, personally, having those lessons is so crucial in having a well-rounded education. But when we think about exploration and trial and error, some of the most wonderful and notable moments in my academic career come from like my science, my biology and chemistry classes, where I get to figure out, I'm not told things, I'm thrown into the deep end, and I have to figure out how it works with hands-on activities, and then kind of develop those analytical, those thinking skills, emphasizing not the what and the when, but the why.
So to go off a little bit more of what Manav says, I'm going to talk about PBL, or project-based learning. I personally go to a project-based learning school, and I like to talk about it and really push for it because I believe that PBL embraces the analytical, hands-on, creative aspects of real-world work experience and applies it in the classroom. So when you leave your K-12 education, you're ready for the workforce and you know how to lead yourself in the work environment. One of my favorite stories that I like to tell people is about my 7th grade class. We had a project where we presented like this scenario that the paraplegic Olympics were needing an obstacle course or a ninja warrior course for people that had disabilities, amputees, people that were in wheelchairs. And in math, we learned geometry and we had all these formulas. And so taking that and applying it for this real world model on how to help people outside of just like a worksheet or a homework or an assignment really made it more impactful. I took away from that I was able to take my basics and go beyond, and that no matter, even though it wasn't traditional, I could still apply that in any homework that I would have to come across that had those same topics. You learn the standards of critiquing and finding objective factual information, because you're not only talking about yourself or teaching yourself, you're teaching others people. So you have a responsibility on your behalf. And one of the things that I really, really want to emphasize is that there is a constant sustained inquiry from the students. No matter what the project may be, there's a creative liberty that you have, and it maintains that not one project will ever be the same, because you're presented the information, but the result will always be different.
So we presented some of these problems, and we talked about education techniques that can kind of cultivate solutions. But broadly, when it comes to classroom censorship and when it comes to discriminatory curriculums, to prevent the passing of more, or even introduction of more egregious bills like SB3, we need to diversify policymakers. We need to get the vote out. We need to stop voting in people who threaten equitable education. We need, and by doing so, promoting objective education, the truth, the whole truth, accurate and inspiring critical thinking, the full story, not the parts that placate people and make people comfortable. And as Josue already talked about, ethnic studies, an incredibly crucial type of learning in different cultures and their stories.
Thank you guys so much. So I'm just gonna try to lead into ending of our conversation by emphasizing our call to action statements. Number one, please harness the power that your voices have. You hold the ability to make the change you wish to see, and that's why we're here today. We're students, and most of the time people don't think that we should have a role in the government, but we have invaluable knowledge, and we encourage you to utilize that the same. And I know, turn to the students, it might be a little scary, but despite our age, we know what ways that are, while we're in the classroom, that can make our education system better. And please ally with us, because we're not scared, we don't bite. And number three, start local. You don't need to go to the highest level of government to make change. Beginning in your community is just as, or even more impactful. So is there any questions for us? We can lead into maybe a conversation if you have any questions for any of the people that presented today. We're all ears. And if you're not comfortable with going off mute, you can as well type in the chat, and we can spend maybe 10 minutes answering any questions.
Hi, everyone. This is Christina Munoz. I'm actually a research analyst here at IDRA, but I just wanted to come off mute and just celebrate our incredible presenters for their hard work, their research that went into coordinating the summit. It was completely student developed and student led, as you can see here this evening. But I just wanted, again, to come off mute and just share how excited I am and how proud I am of the students' hard work. Maybe this would be a good opportunity for, as a question, how the Youth Advisory Board has helped shape your perspective on student advocacy. And this can go for anybody, but it might be cool to share a little bit more about the program and kind of what your role has looked like and evolved over the last year.
For me, I think this whole experience has really been interesting because it has taught me so much about advocacy and education and law within education and activism within education and just everything surrounding all of that. And it's been really, really eye-opening. I made a lot of friends that have the exact same interests as me and the exact same motive to better the system as a whole. And I also learned a lot of how to research, how to put together presentations, how to use Outlook and Adobe, not Adobe, Outlet. Really a big experience, and I highly recommend for whenever there is another you happening that either policy just wants to better themselves as a person apply, because I had no idea what education policy was in the beginning, or how it affected schools, or how it affected the system, but it really helped me a lot to with growing. Thank you so much, all the employees that each from all.
Is it cool if I share too? Or... Okay, cool. So for the youth advisory board, okay, probably one of, if not the biggest thing that I learned was that there are so many people that are interested in exactly what I'm interested in and what other people are interested in, which sounds very broad. But for example, I was saying like about the community of practice for Moz. There's people who dedicate so much time just to expand Mexican American studies. And so I've met so many like, not policy makers per se, but people who work in that, people who work in education reform. And then it's just so interesting that there's so many people that specialize in, for example, like the school to prison pipeline or something like that. So I've just met a lot of very interesting people. There's people who work, all the way in Georgia. There's people who work all the way in California. And yeah, I think like it's kind of like I didn't really understand how big of a thing education like reform advocacy actually was. Like to be honest, before this program, I always thought like, oh, maybe it's a couple people like that are wanting to do this thing. But no, like, even when I just learned just about IDRA, like, oh, there's someone who's just for comms, there's people who are just for family engagement. And yeah, so I want to like say like, yeah, the youth advisory board has taught me that there's just people that are dedicated to everything. And this kind of community, it's kind of like a family, is like really, really huge. And any kind of resource, like, it's available if you look for it.
So it looks like Amaya has a question. How did we all get into education justice? We all have different experiences, but I can start. So with the youth advisory board, I think I just like saw an ad on Twitter or something. I think I saw their post. I'm like, this is interesting. I mean, because I had become aware about that time, about a year ago or more, that the education that I was experiencing, particularly in the social sciences and the language arts departments, were so not reflective of what our world today and our identities today. And it hadn't really occurred to me that I wanted to do something about it, but I saw the opportunity. I thought that would seem pretty cool. I'm kind of in. So does anybody else have insights on the same question?
I can speak on it. I run this chapter at my school called Diversify Our Narrative, and I think I was on another presentation and IDRA was there, and I was like, oh, this sounds really cool. I wonder if I can bring this back to my team. And so I was like, hey, if you'll have anything, I would really love to just like help out. And so that's how I first got my introduction. But I think like the time that I met like Christina, Irene, and Thomas was that they wanted us to speak as like student perspective on like a research project. And from there I was like, yeah, I really love this. I want to keep on doing it. So that's how I got into this.
I'd like to share my story too. So I remember a while ago, I'm not sure if I think this was part of IDRA, okay, the chief STEM officer for schools, and I was interested in doing that, but I missed a deadline. But anyway, so what happened was my teacher our government and law teacher just randomly came up to me and was like, I feel like you do good in this sort of program thing. I don't know what it is, but it sounds like something you do good in. And she literally said, I think it's about charter schools or something like that. And I was kind of not sure about anything, but then the more I looked into it, I was like, you know what, there's a lot of stuff that I don't like about like the schools. I mean about certain practices that schools sometimes use. I was like, maybe I can learn more about that sort of thing in this thing. And like honestly, I didn't know what I was gonna getting myself into, but I'm like really glad I did it. And that's my story. My teacher referred me to it. And yeah.
I mean, I can go ahead and go. So I found out about this through my mom, who found out about it through Dr. Liz, who is here tonight. And advocacy has always been something I've been interested in, even before the program. So it just kind of helped boost that connection, I guess.
I think the only person who hasn't talked is Shreya. Do you want to briefly discuss how you got into advocacy?
Yeah, sure. I found out about IDRA because my friend had sent me her application and asked, like, she was like, I think you'd actually be better at this than me. Like, you should try out. And so I did. And honestly, I didn't know a lot about the education system, but I think that what everyone has in common is that basis of education that you get in elementary school through high school, right? Like that's what we all have in common, and that education informs so many of our decisions past high school and in like, choosing jobs and just how you go about life is so informed by education, and the policies that impact education should be better utilized and framed to support students. I think that unfortunately there are some policies that hurt students, and being able to learn about that through IDRA was so incredible, and also just really kind of broadened my view of education policy and the education system. I was like, okay, school is not just teachers deciding what to teach me. It goes so much deeper than that on a state level and a federal level. And I think it's just been a very enlightening experience.
All right. Do we have any more questions? Feel free to just put something in the chat or come off mute.
Of course, Rashad. And we do this because we are very passionate about the work that we do, and we would love for you guys to get involved any way possible, or just there's many ways you can sign up. Look through IDRA's website that you can get involved. One way is signing up. IDRA also has a newsletter that gets published every month, and there's a lot of good resources on there that you guys can see and check out if you would like to. But just you being here and learning and hearing from us is powerful in and of itself. So thank you guys for coming.
Yeah, and yes, so we are going to share this entire. So we're going to share all the contact info for a focus group or for the articles we reference. Basically, everything we talked about will be in a kind of a doc, and we'll just send it to everyone who registered. So yeah, further ado, I think that concludes. Thank you so much for everyone attending.